This is Kerry Facer, one of the founders and partners of Warren Street Wealth Advisors, and we want to thank you for joining the Oil and Gas Retirement Planning webinar. It is September 22nd, 2020. We're going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes together, and on the call today, we have two of our lead certified financial planners, Justin Rucci and Emily. You both here?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Kerry.
All right. And we also have our... yes. We also have our resident Chevron expert, Len Hansen, with us as well. Len, you there?
I'm here.
Good, good. Okay, so let's begin. So let's get right into the workshop. We have, let's take a look here. There we go. Quick disclosure, if you want a copy of our Form ADV, its background on Warren Street Wealth Advisors and who we are, please give us a call, 714-876-6200. Happy to provide that to you. Today's agenda goes like this. We're going to go through the 8 steps in preparing for a successful retirement. So without further ado, let's get started. But first, a fun little icebreaker here. So fun comic strip, we hear this all the time, especially at Chevron, is should I buy or sell Chevron stock? And it's a difficult decision. So here we go. It says, we're in a recession. It may be a smart time to buy. Buy, are you leaving? Did she get fired? Layoffs. This is so depressing. Depression, we're in a depression, sell. We see it all the time. So that's us, Warren Street Wealth Advisors. We are a fee-based RIA here in Tustin. We also have a satellite office in El Segundo over at the Towers. That is our team there. The one important thing to note about us is we're a true ensemble. As you see on the call today, we have 4 of us. So we actually work as a team to provide whatever's in the best interest of our clients. And so we're going to share that with you today. We're going to jump right in here. So obviously the first step is attend a workshop. You're here with us today, so thank you for joining. And number 2, we're going to go into the retirement handbook. And I'd like to ask Justin to cover this part. So Justin, are you there?
I'm here. Yes, thanks, Kerry. So I'm going to run through the retirement handbook with everybody quickly. This is something we have a PDF of, so we'll be sending out a copy of everything that we go over today after the webinar. So the first 2 are relatively straightforward, and you're already making a big step towards getting these done by joining the call today, which is having a plan to begin with. So just knowing what it is you want to accomplish and working with somebody, hopefully, to figure out how to get there. Number 3 is making sure your retirement timing is correct. This is case by case, but in the case of Chevron, we often see people time their retirement in the first part of a calendar year, try and get that Q1 bonus, and then obviously with everything that's going on in Chevron, trying to time things as much as you can control it with the packages that they're doing. So definitely something you want to make sure you're taking into consideration on your decision. Number 4 is wanting to retire early. So we run into this a lot, and especially recently with, again, the packet or the early retirement packages. Just because you're not IRS retirement age of 59 and a half does not mean you cannot retire. We see people go as early as 55. You can potentially even go sooner if you've been a good saver. But the main thing here is just don't feel like you have to be 59 and a half to retire. There are ways to work around those early withdrawal penalties, which we can help you with. Number 5 is budgeting for medical expenses. So this is one of the things that people tend to sometimes forget when planning for retirement. So making sure that you're adding in, what's currently coming out of your paycheck as a medical expense, and then potentially, depending on what age you're retiring, adding in some buffer because your medical costs may increase in retirement. So making sure you're factoring that into your calculations. Number 6 here is say goodbye to credit card debt. So this means getting credit cards cleaned up, kind of clean up the balance sheet and get some of that high interest rate debt, if you have any, paid off, ideally prior to retiring. Number 7 kind of goes hand in hand here, which is just building up your emergency savings. So if we get the high interest rate debt paid off, the next logical step is to try and build up some cash buffer. The general rule of thumb is to try and get at least 6 months worth of expenses in savings prior to retirement. Not a hard and fast rule, but certainly something to shoot for. Now, to figure out that number, you're going to need to complete number 8, which is build and keep a budget. This is honestly one of the most important parts of building a retirement plan. Is you could have all the money in the world saved, but if we don't know how much you need to spend each month or each year, we can't really build an accurate retirement plan. So building and keeping a budget is extremely important, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Number 9 is weighing your options for Social Security. So you can take Social Security as early as age 62, as late as age 70. Your quote unquote full retirement age is somewhere typically in 66 to 67 range, depending on what year you were born. Something we can help you out with figuring out what the best time to take that is. And lastly here, investing for your retirement. This means maxing out your 401k, diversifying, taking advantage of all the avenues that are available to you from an investment and tax front, and doing so as smartly as you can, which means not being all in company stock, for example. I'm going to jump into number 3 here, which is just avoiding some of the common roadblocks. The first one and the last one here we kind of already covered, which are failure to plan or just procrastination. So by being here, you obviously kind of took some steps towards avoiding those. Second one here, lack of financial knowledge. Again, by being here, you're helping that one out, but it's a common roadblock we see is not knowing how to proceed on a lot of the questions that come up with retirement. Number 3 is rising prices or inflation. This is another one that tends to get forgotten. Cost of living today is obviously higher than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And if you're planning for a 30-year retirement, you want to make sure that you're planning for cost of living raises as well. And then the fourth one here, the last one we'll cover is tax burden. So while some taxes go away in retirement, mainly Social Security, payroll tax, you'll still be paying federal tax and state tax, depending on which state you're residing at the time. So making sure you're planning for that, which we'll help with as well. Number 4 on our to-do list for tonight is learning some basic investment tips. First one is the one that you have the most control over, which is just how much you're able to save. So once you kind of have a feel for how much you're able to save each month, the next logical step is to figure out how much risk you can take with that. So you don't want to just save and stick the money under the mattress. You want to take smart risk and get that money invested. Number 3 is when you're investing. I notice I said smart risk. That means not putting all your eggs in one basket. And you want to make sure that you're diversified and spreading your monies out among different companies, industries, geographical locations, etc. Number 4 is making the most of the tax code. There's a note here about Mega Roth I'm going to get to in just a moment here, but taking advantage of what avenues are available to you. 5 is rebalance. This is another common one that's forgotten, is maybe somebody sets their 401k up when they started a company and then never really rebalance it or look at it again until it comes time to retire. Rebalancing is actually a huge key to investing and something that you want to make sure that you're doing on a regular basis and something we help our clients out with. And lastly here, think contrarian, kind of similar to the cartoon in the beginning here, is avoid a lot of the hearsay, avoid what the people on TV or people at the water cooler at work are saying, and be willing to take a different path, because oftentimes that's where the best investments are hiding. So I'm going to go over the Mega Roth and what that really means. So when I say take advantage of all the tax avenues and tax advantages that you have, the first one on this list here is something everybody has that works at Chevron or any company that offers a 401k plan, which is the ability to contribute up to either in 2020, $19,500 or $26,000 if you turn 50 this year or older, as either pre-tax or, in the case of Chevron and many employers, Roth, or combination of the two. The limit that a lot of people don't realize exists is that second limit on the slide, which is actually a total contribution limit, which is what you put in for pre-tax and Roth, what your employer puts in as a match, and then what you can put in as an after-tax dollar. And there's technically a difference between after-tax and Roth, despite the fact that those two tend to be incorrectly used interchangeably in many cases. So on the next slide, I'll go over what those differences are. So here's kind of a brief summary. So after-tax is not quite as tax advantaged as Roth. In both after-tax and Roth, you don't get any immediate tax deduction, and the dollars grow tax deferred. The main difference is with Roth dollars, assuming you meet the distribution requirements, that earnings on those dollars will be tax-free, where on after-tax, any increase in value or growth that you receive is taxable at time of distribution. So after-tax is just tax deferred, where Roth is tax-free. So obviously, if you had the choice between the two, you would choose Roth. Go to the next slide, and we'll go over an example here. So the reason the normal, quote unquote, normal contributions are capped is because that Roth is the more preferential of the two. So if you have that pre-tax Roth or the combination capped at $26,000, you're making $100,000 a year. Let's assume you max that out and you're over the age of 50. You're going to get $8,000 in this example from your company as a match. That leaves from the total limit of 63.5. You have basically another $29,500 that you could theoretically contribute to the 401k before you hit the total contribution limit between all types and sources. So in this example, if somebody is a really good saver, they could technically save up to another $29,500 into their 401k on an after-tax basis. And that money would grow tax deferred. Now, two main things: you do not need to be 59 and a half to do this strategy. And the main thing that you really want to do to take full advantage of this situation, we do this for people all the time, is that 29.5 or whatever amount you decide to contribute after tax can then later be converted to Roth. So the next slide actually kind of gives a graphical example of what this looks like. So if you contribute 29.5, we'll assume that's the green part of this bar graph. Any earnings that you accumulate between the time you contribute it and the time you convert it or withdraw it is that blue section. So you basically have a couple options when you convert. You can either convert the whole thing and whatever blue sections you have is taxable and it goes into your Roth and grows tax-free from that point forward. Or what most people end up doing is they roll the green portion to their Roth IRA, the blue portion to their traditional IRA, and there's zero tax paid today. You still get a huge number of dollars growing tax-free for you, and then the rest, the earnings will grow tax-deferred for you and be taxable in retirement, ideally, at a lower tax bracket at that point. So that's kind of the after-tax Roth strategy in a nutshell, and the mega Roth in a nutshell. Obviously complex, which is why we tend to walk everybody through these processes and not expect you to handle this on your own. I'm actually going to pass it back to Kerry now that we talked about some of the financial pieces. He's going to go over some of the lifestyle and vision type pieces that you want to be thinking about when you look at retirement.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. So one other thing too is, we typically do these workshops in person across the street from the refinery. And so there's a lot more client interaction. So I want to remind everybody who's or client participation or audience participation. So for those that are listening, we do have a chat and a question feature. So we will address those towards the end. And you're welcome to ask us anything. And then also for Emily and Lynn as well. I know we're all on mute right now, but feel free to chime in as we go through. And if we make any mistakes, please chime in and let us know that we didn't catch something right. Lynn, I know you know the benefits so well, and Emily, tax and estate planning, please chime in. So retirement, rehirement, or new chapter. Over the years, we've seen, now this is entering my 14th year of helping people plan retirement. And one of the things I enjoy most is helping them create the vision for that. And I share that with the team all the time, is remind your clients, why we have all this money and why we're saving and working so hard is to get clarity on what we're going to do with all our time and now our money in retirement. And so some of the things to be considering while you're coming through this is, why do I want to retire? What will I be doing with my time? Is it, is it strictly more time for hobbies, family, travel, sports, learn, volunteer? And these are some things to get excited about, because this is not, this is, not the beginning of the end. This is really a start of the new and a beginning of a real chapter of life that is yet to be defined. And so we want to start with just some clarity on what that might look like. And then clarity here too is retirement. A lot of people have been coming to us and saying, I want to spend more time with family and more time to travel. However, we're also considering moving out of state. And while our clients are all over the country, the majority of our clients, or I should say, the majority of people on this call are from the refinery in the El Segundo area. This is our specific workshop for you. And the thing to consider, we can tell you what the the most and least expensive metro areas are in taxes, but the two things I like to remind everybody are where are your relationships and where's the weather that you enjoy most. And so we've often told clients that are getting ready to retire who want to move to a state with a lower maybe cost of living and a lower state income tax, is consider the weather and the relationships. So where are the people that you want to be closest to? And then as far as the weather, don't just visit during the summertime. Try going to stay, maybe a good 2 or 3 weeks in a city you like during the winter. If you've been in Southern California for the majority of your career, we've become accustomed to warm, dry weather and it being 72 to 100 year round. So we have actually seen a client retire go and rent in a particular state, city they wanted to live in, and he actually decided to not stay in that town and ended up going back where he was originally born and raised, which is in the state of Kansas. So some things to think about. Good news, we're all living longer. So when we build a plan for you, we need to be very conservative in our approach to show longer life expectancy. And so what this shows is that based on where you live geographically, obviously in the previous slide, this is in relation to the cost of living. But here we're looking more at longevity around the world. So good news is in North America, we have the longest life expectancy, which is fantastic news. The challenge as financial planners for our clients is ensuring that the money that you have saved in your 401ks, that you have in your cash balance plan, will last the remainder of your life. So when we build a plan, a lot of our clients are surprised to see that we're putting expectations of life expectancy to 100. But if you think about it, if you're alive and well today, age, say 55 to 65, the odds of you living into your 90s is very high. While the average life expectancy is lower, say, between, 77, 78 years old, if you're alive and well today and you're in a retirement planning workshop, the odds of you living into your 90s is very high. And so we want to take a conservative approach when we think about life expectancy and ensuring your money lasts as long as possible. So we complete step 5, building the vision for your retirement, some things to think about, volunteering, travel, hobbies, relationships with loved ones. Now we want to think about the retirement toolkit, and hopefully today your life doesn't feel like this poor woman here at the desk with all that paperwork behind her. Justin, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. So this is another document that we have in PDF format that we can send out. And it's basically a 2-section document where we call it the retirement toolkit. And it really boils down to the 2 most important things you want to figure out if you're planning to retire in the near future. And it's your net worth scorecard, which we have on the screen here, and a budget. First, on the net worth scorecard, just to quickly summarize what you have here is basically a breakdown, and we've listed examples of common categories here and account types of all the assets that you have as a household, all the liabilities that you have as a household, and then we're basically going to subtract the liabilities from the assets to come up with our net worth. And so this is actually a really good exercise, particularly if somebody's planning to retire, but honestly just in general, especially for couples, because sometimes we find accounts exist that maybe we forgot about, or accounts exist that one spouse knew about but the other one didn't. And so this is actually a good exercise to do regardless, but particularly important if you're planning to retire in the near future, just to get a good snapshot of what it is that you have as a household. And then the second piece is the budget, which I mentioned earlier is really the most important, or one of the most important things you want to figure out is, okay, so if we figure out how much we have in terms of available assets, the next thing we need to figure out is really how much do we need each month from those assets. And so we did the same thing here where we came up with a list of the most common categories and expenses that we see. We left in some spots on the end there for other things that don't fit into any of these categories. And the goal here is not necessarily to get down to the exact penny here, but just come up with a rough estimate of what you think you spend each month while trying to get as accurate as possible without driving yourself nuts. So we usually recommend spending about 15, 20 minutes coming up with this. And this allows us to run projections on your behalf and do calculations and figure out whether or not you have the green light to be able to retire based on how much you have saved today. Last step on our to-do list, or one of the last steps on our to-do list here, is decide whether you want to DIY or whether you want to try and hire some help. So I'm going to pass it back to Kerry. He's going to go over some of those details.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Len brought it to our attention years ago when he was working at Chevron. Some of the retirement workshops he went to, he would ask really straightforward questions. And the problem was he would not get straightforward answers from some of the salespeople at those workshops. And so we wanted to make it very clear in the beginning what we charge, how we charge, and be transparent. As fiduciaries, it's our obligation to our clients and to the general public. And so what we like to share during this part is what we actually charge, how it works, and that way you can understand what to look for out there in the space, because there's a lot of different ways to do it. And my goal is to steer you clear of some of the less than desirable setups for the general public, and steer you towards a relationship that is different from, truly different from the rest. And so the one thing that we're very clear with is our transparent pricing. And so one of the things we've been doing, and this was really an idea Len had years ago, is he was being approached by all his friends that he'd been helping at Chevron saying, I'm getting ready to retire. Can you help me manage my money? And or I'm maybe 2 years away from retirement. Can you help me manage my money? And so we came up with a program called 401k Assist and a living balance sheet. But the 401k Assist is the core service, and that's for a year. So it's $400. And what that is we'll actually go through and take a look at your current holdings in the 401k plan, make recommendations, and then finally link your 401k to your client portal, so our team can actually see your 401k on a daily basis. And then with that, we'll be doing our 90-day check-in with you. And then if you want to renew each year, every year on an annual basis, we'll make an update to your portfolio and to your 401k, and that's $400. Now, if you want to go forward with a comprehensive financial plan, our minimum on that is $1,200 per year. And our average price is anywhere between $1,200 to about $2,500 on the high end for a more complex case. But on average, I'd say we're somewhere between the $1,500 and $2,000 range. And what that is that's everything that we can do as certified financial planners as your team to go through and build you a comprehensive financial plan. And it has nothing to do with investments. So a lot of clients will come to us and say, I want to retire, and I have these 12 accounts. I have this amount of money in savings checking. I have this income, this tax bracket, all the stuff, right? It's that big pile of paperwork you just saw behind that poor woman. I need somebody to go through this and make sense of this, and I want to know what it looks like to retire at age 55. I want to know what it looks like to retire at age 59 and a half, 62, 65. We can run as many scenarios as you want. And with that $1,200 plan, we've seen that we can build those plans in about 2 to 3 months, but the real challenge is implementation, is getting everything done. So we include with that entire 12-month of service. So that way, when we come with our solutions, we are able to then spend a good amount of time with our clients, making sure we can implement those solutions and then make adjustments as we need to. So what's very common is, someone asked this last time at the in-person workshop, so I want to address it. If you do the $1,200 minimum on a financial plan, it does include that $400 above for the 401k Assist. So if you do a financial plan, it's not $1,200 plus $400, it includes the $400. We'll do the 401k recommendation for you as well. Then on investment management, so our other service, we have financial planning and investment management. So then when you actually do go to retire and we have, let's say, a 401k that you want us to manage for you, you've now retired, you've left Chevron, you want to roll that over into an individual IRA, and that account we're going to manage for you as your investment managers, then this is the fee schedule. And this is a per year fee, and it's on a tiered schedule, and it's debited quarterly in arrears. Now I'm going to tell a little bit more how it works, but I want to get to the next slide because the majority of our clients come to us from referral or word of mouth. So the financial planning is the same pricing. It's a 401k Assist, as I mentioned earlier, and it's the financial plan with a $1,200 minimum starting at. And again, it ranges between about $1,200 to $2,000. And if you ever decided to work with us, we would give you a proposal for that. So you would know what you're getting into before even making any decisions. On the investment management, our friends and family pricing, it knocks the first million tier down to a flat 1%. And then what it does is it bundles. So we're allowed to do up to 5 friends and family for this program. So if you retired, let's say with $1 million, which is fairly common, it seems like at Chevron, and you had 4 other friends and family, you would have bundled pricing like as a $5 million account. And because it's a tiered schedule, it's an effective fee schedule, an average of these. And that would work out in this scenario at $5 million, 5 families, to 0.83% effective pricing on average for everybody per year. Again, debited quarterly in arrears, that works out to be about 0.21% per quarter for our service. And we came up with this because we were getting bid against some larger institutional money managers, and we wanted to be as competitive as they were, but still be the local boutique shop that takes really good care of their clients. And so we came up with this program, and this is what we have to offer. So I'm going to back up once again. This is if you come in by yourself with no friends or family referral. This is if you're referred in. And if you're on this one here, and then you were to have somebody else join you, let's say in a year after they retire, you both effectively or immediately would go to this schedule. So that's our friends and family 5. If you have more questions about that, I know that was a lot. Please ask in the chat or on the follow-up. So our process on the financial planning side, so this is if you wanted to have us build you, let's say, a retirement plan or a comprehensive financial plan, it's a 6-step process. We start with our first meeting, which is establish. And for anybody who wants to follow up with us after this meeting, we'll send you out our calendar or link to book and establish with us. And that's a sit-down conversation where it's just about you. And obviously, we're still doing everything via Zoom or screen share. And that would be in this situation either with Lynn Hansen, Blake, or myself. And then after establish, if you decided you wanted to move forward or get a proposal or quote or look at more details of what we'd recommend, that would be step 2 where we go through discovery. So the first meeting established, it's a no obligation, no risk meeting with us, no strings attached. You can ask some of our clients who have worked with us in the past. We are not going to try to hard sell you on anything. We're just going to try to figure out if we can help you or not. And that's your decision to decide if you want to work with us or not. And so discover, and then when we actually get into the real work. So this is where we really dig in here. And this is full discovery and documentation. We go through and build a comprehensive financial plan for you, and that's step 3. That's on the back end. We then come together and we present our solutions. This could be probably 1 or 2 meetings between your team and yourself. And then that's where we talked about the entire year of service. That's the implementation portion. That's where you get the remainder of the year, the 12-month subscription with our firm, Warren Street Wealth Advisors, to make sure we have plenty of time to get the implementation done. And why it takes so long sometimes is because we have items such as estate planning, where we might be recommending you go through and get a will, living trust, durable power of attorney, medical directive, as an example. And it takes time to get that done. It's not something we can get done very quickly. And most importantly is monitor and adapt. And every 90 days, we're getting together with you and reviewing and making sure that you're doing well, you're on track, and we are meeting your expectations. And then on the back end, I know this is a lot, but our engineer clients like to see what it looks like kind of underneath the hood. Is once we get the plan done, this is again, if you do a financial plan, this is what it looks like when we're done. And the neat part is once the plan is done and both parties between you and our firm have agreed that the data is accurate, then we can play around and manipulate the data. So if the original idea was to retire at age 55, but now you want to retire at age 53, it's a very simple thing for us to illustrate. Or if you still want to stay, let's say, on track at age 53, but you want to see how much you can actually spend, we can drag that, let's see if I get my cursor over here, we can drag the spending up to illustrate if that works. And what we want to do is we want to keep the plan in the green zone. And while 72% might not sound great because we're used to in school that being a C, in our system here, 72% is in the confidence zone, and anything in the green or above is really a good sign for us to say with confidence that you can retire and accomplish all your goals based on what we have in the system. And then on the investment management side, so we're switching gears here again, but we're going from financial planning to investment management. And this is what I talked about earlier. If you had a 401k plan and you're now retired and you rolled that over into an individual retirement account and we're managing the investments for you, this is how we'll actually go through and pick your investment allocation. We have 3 core strategies that we manage at Warren Street Wealth Advisors. This is what Blake and Phil and our investment team portfolio managers spend the majority of their hours doing, is managing these 3 core strategies, which is a global stock sleeve and portfolio, a global bond, and a global real asset. And our job as your team, as your financial planners, is to find the right combination of investments that meet your objectives and your goals. So we take these 3, we blend them into what is your custom portfolio, and it's based on these 7 criteria down here in the bottom, which is risk tolerance, asset allocation, tax efficiency, looking at your portfolio from a global perspective, so looking in international and emerging markets, not just US stocks. We're always looking to seek value, try to find value, try to buy things that might be out of favor today and hope that they're in favor next year. We always want to reduce friction. So we're talking about trading costs. And so trying to buy things that we can trade without any trade fees. And the behavioral alpha. Behavioral alpha is really important. We look back at the global recession or the Great Recession, or even recently with COVID-19. This is it's protecting our clients from themselves. And so when the times are tough and the values are down, it's telling them to stick to the process or stick to the investment strategy, because the last thing we want to see is a client buying high and selling low. And we saw this recently in the months that just passed. We had a handful of people call us when the markets were down in April, and it was our job to keep them invested with confidence. And I'm so glad we did, because obviously we've seen a very nice recovery. And so that's the behavioral aspect to investing. I'm going to switch it back here real quick. We have a bonus piece here. We had this asked of us a while back, is how do I handle my ESOP shares? So Justin is going to cover here real quick how to take care of your common stock and ESOP. And Lynn, this is really your area of expertise as well, so feel free to chime in here as we go through these.
Thanks, Gary. So one of the things we see frequently when we work with somebody from Chevron is that either all or the majority of their 401k is invested in Chevron stock. And I'm sure for many, they've probably heard this before, but they maybe didn't think about all of these little details that we have on the slide here, which is you're not just relying on Chevron as a company for the money that you have invested in their stock, but you're also relying on Chevron for your paycheck, your health insurance and benefits, your retirement contributions, your 401k match, as well as your pension. And you're also, having your money invested in them. So don't think it's just, oh, I have all my money invested in Chevron. It's also those other three things that your whole financial life in many respects is relying on Chevron as a company if you are 100% in Chevron stock. So what are the things that you should be thinking about and potentially even take action on? Is review what your ESOP holdings are versus what your common shares holdings are, because there is a big difference between the two of them, which we'll cover on the next slide here. And one of the things you might want to look at, and one of the things we help a lot of people with, is keeping those ESOP shares as is, and looking at reducing or potentially even eliminating what you have in common shares, because those are, of the two, the less favorable. The ESOP shares do come with some tax benefits that we'll cover on the next slide. That tax benefit is known as net unrealized appreciation, or NUA for short. And once you have the desire to diversify out of Chevron stock, the next logical step is to figure out a plan for what to do with those proceeds of the stock sale and coming up with an asset allocation plan. I'll quickly cover this slide and then I'll let Len kind of finish it up. But here's kind of what the tax advantage of ESOP looks like in the form of a bar graph. The left-hand side is if you do nothing, which unfortunately in many cases we see. If somebody either doesn't have an advisor or has an advisor who's not aware of this strategy, is where 100% of your 401k is taxed as ordinary income. If you take advantage of the ESOP strategy, there's a good chance that the majority of your ESOP stock value can actually be taxed as long-term capital gains. You would pay a little bit of tax up front on the basis, which I'll let Len elaborate on, and then whatever increase in value of the share you've had since they were given to you years ago would all be taxed at capital gains rate, which for the majority of people would be a much lower rate. Len, I'll pass it to you.
All I really have to say is just so everybody's not trying to figure out what their cost basis is. Typically for everyone, it's about $18 a share, maybe a little bit less than $18 a share cost basis for those shares. And one thing I wanted to add too is I run into a lot of folks that want me to help them with their plan after several years, and they get frustrated with the price of Chevron stock, especially lately. And what they'll do is they'll sign up for the Fidelity program management system, which is, I think it's called, I'm not even sure what it is. It might be called Financial Engines. I know that's what it was with Vanguard. But they will sell your ESOP shares, regardless if if you just tell them, I think you give them a percentage of Chevron you want to hold on to. I've run into just about everybody that I've helped that's gone through that system. Fidelity or Vanguard have sold their majority of their shares, so they can't take advantage of this strategy. So just keep that in mind. If you have used that system, then you probably lost most of your ESOP shares. If you haven't, and you haven't messed around with the plan and sold any shares, then you likely have maybe 15, 20%, maybe as much as 25% of your money in ESOP shares, Chevron ESOP shares. Back to you.
Thanks, Glenn. I just want to cover one last thing here, which is a little bit on the, not Chevron specific, but just a little bit timely, and what the CARES Act, which was a stimulus package, passed back in the first part of this year when COVID-19 was really at its peak. And there was a number of financial pieces that came out of that stimulus. So I'm just going to, as quickly as I can, condense a multi-100-page bill into a few bullet points here. The first one is 2020 RMDs or waves. That's required minimum distributions. So this is probably for anyone on the call, the only way that you'd probably have this is if you inherited an IRA. You do not need to take a distribution from that inherited IRA this year. The other RMDs are applicable for individuals who are over the age of 70 and a half and have IRA money. Second bullet point here is you are able to take a distribution without the typical early 10% withdrawal penalty, up to $100,000. If you were impacted by the virus, that is pretty vague. So it can be impacted financially, whether your pay was cut or your bonus was cut, or impacted meaning you actually contracted the virus. If you take that distribution, you do have a little bit more flexibility than you typically would. You can either spread the tax over multiple years, up to 3, or you can even repay the distribution back into the account, effectively making it similar to a loan and get the tax waived altogether. The most cases, if you're going to do this, you probably want to spread the tax over 3 years if you're not going to repay it. The one exception is if your 2020 income is low, then maybe you can make a case for paying all the tax this year, but that's likely a rare scenario. The other bullet point here is if you wanted to take an actual loan rather than take a distribution and then counting on yourself to pay it back, you can kind of hold your feet to the fire and take an actual loan, forcing yourself, or at least making it a little bit more difficult to not pay it back by taking up to a $100,000 loan, which were previously capped at 50% or 50% of your balance or $50,000. That got increased up to $100,000. Last bullet point I'll make note of here is, yes, like I already said, you have to be impacted by the virus, but just because these options are available does not mean you should use them. I tend to look at these as kind of last resort. So if you really need the money, it's available. But if not, I would steer clear of this. It's just one of those things where the temptation is obviously there, but I wouldn't recommend doing this, at least without talking to us first. And that's really it on our to-do list for today. So we're going to open the floor up to questions. It doesn't look like I'm actually just going to put a quick note in the chat here just to make sure everybody knows how to find it.
Yeah, and while we're doing that, Emily, I'm going to unmute you as well. Let me go here. Emily, you, while we're getting the questions, do you have anything to add? I mean, the CARES Act, I think, was important. I know you helped write a piece on that. Anything specific there you want to chime in on, or Social Security, estate planning, anything jump out to you that we missed?
I suppose that, those are certainly areas we will help top clients through. Social Security planning, especially with spouses, there are some strategies. A lot of the kind of fun planning strategies have been shut down by Congress, but there's still some nice planning strategies with regard to spousal Social Security strategies. So always something we want to look at, and there are ways to optimize, and those optimizations can make a big difference over the long run. And certainly estate planning is on everyone's mind this year, just because of, global pandemic and, just everyone kind of thinking about heavier issues more often these days. So kind of, always checking your beneficiaries on your various retirement accounts, insurance policies. That's something we want to remind our clients to do annually. And certainly any accounts we manage, we're always monitoring beneficiary status in terms of life events or life changes. But, so kind of an estate planning checkup is something we recommend once a year. We can certainly help clients through that, and getting a lot more questions about that this year than normal.
I'll jump in here and ask a couple of questions, because these are the most common ones I think we hear at the events. Or one, is Social Security retirement income, is that the program going to run out of money? And if so, should I take my Social Security as soon as possible, or should I wait?
So, okay, great question. You know, certainly we hear a lot about potential insolvency and the exact date. You know, I think it's got 15 years, 20 years or so until that date. There will be some legislative changes that save that system. I am not worried about that system going away, those benefits disappearing. I know that is on a lot of people's mind. It has been such a successful program. I'm not worried about that program ever disappearing. Probably what they will do is either raise the cap of wages that are taxed for Social Security, or raise the retirement age. I think there's a lot more political will to raise the cap of wages that are taxed, that Social Security tax. So anyway, there are absolutely solutions to save that system. And I mean, even as soon as, you know, with any changes with the upcoming election, we might see some of those implemented sooner than later. So I'm not worried about the system going away. That being said, certainly understand the benefit of, you know, wanting to draw early. We've paid into that system for so long, wanting to reap some of the benefits.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, of course, everything comes down to life expectancy and longevity. And if you know the exact day you're going to die, we can tell you the exact best day to draw Social Security. You know, barring that foreknowledge, we can certainly help people strategize, split the difference, you know, look at some averages in terms of life expectancy, and kind of split the difference between drawing and getting that income stream. If they have other sources of income, a lot of times waiting until 70, getting the full delayed retirement credits of 8% per year can be very powerful and really a form of longevity insurance. So really something we want to take our time in making that decision. But I personally am not worried about that program disappearing. That is not something I think will happen in our lifetimes.
Last and final question before we go, and it's a big one. Lynn, this is for you. All year long, we've been hearing all the obviously negative news about Chevron, you know, with the reduction in force. So there's all the rumors of the package coming down. What's the latest on that? What should people be thinking about? What is, you know, what are you hearing out there?
So there's a lot of things going on. So I'm working with several people that are most likely going to take the package or forced to take the package. I think the biggest thing that people are concerned about, everybody understands the 1 year salary and all that, but the health insurance part of it, and there's, from what I'm hearing, there's 3 different strategies, 3 different choices that you can take, and that's something you have to really take a hard look at if you know, if you're going to be forced or you're going to accept one of the packages coming out here at the end of the year. It's pretty critical stuff, and I think that's a part of the plan that you really want to pay attention to. Everything else is pretty much straightforward, except for, are you going to be able to, if you do take the package, push it off into 2021 instead of taking it this year where you've already made most of your income. But I think that kind of sums it up.
Good. Thank you, Lynn. Well, if anybody wants to continue that conversation, it's really easy to do it. Just give us a call. You can actually call or text that number. Real people answer our lines, and we can schedule some time for you to talk to Lynn about your Chevron 401k, your retirement package benefits. We're a true ensemble. We are a team, so we're all here behind the scenes helping each other accomplish whatever it is you need. So that's how you get a hold of us. And then obviously our guarantee is just put your best interest first, and kind of a no obligation, you know, no cost consultation, no strings attached. So you can schedule online at our site there, /schedule. It has everybody's scheduling tool, including Lynn, Justin, Emily, and myself. And I think Blake's even on there as well. Or just email us, info@warrenstreetwealth.com. That's it. We will be back doing this here hopefully in about another 8 weeks, and we would love to be back in El Segundo at a venue soon. We just are waiting for the world to reopen, and so be patient with us. In the meantime, we are here. We have not gone anywhere, and we'd love to assist you with your retirement. So thank you again for joining, everybody, and thank you to the rest of our team here for helping everybody out. That is it. Have a great rest of your evening, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.